In this video, we're deep sea fishing massive seaweed patches until we catch Florida's most prized fish. So without further ado, let's go see if we can catch this fish. We start our morning making a 4 to 5 mile run offshore in search of some seaweed. It took us about an hour until we hit this giant seaweed patch. So when we found this giant seaweed patch, we also noticed we were on this massive rip, and this is one of the craziest rips I have fished down here in South Florida. So we knew we had to set up on this rip and start fishing. So we set up our trolling spread on this rip, and 45 minutes later our planer popped, and we knew we were hooked into a solid fish. And by the time we found the seaweed line now and we trolled it, we were about 2 hours into fishing here. But when this fish hit, we knew we were hooked into a really solid fish here. So I started cranking really fast here because, as I told you guys in the past videos, when we get hits on these planers, you want to reel in as fast as you can. You don't want to give these fish any tension, and especially these toothier fish, you don't want to give them any shot of cutting you off. So I looked over and my little brother Maverick here had his planer pop, so we had a double hookup at the same time here. And this is a reason why you always want to be trolling 2 to 3 rods at the bare minimum, because a lot of these fish offshore down here do school. So instead of catching one fish, you could up your shots of getting 2 or possibly 3 fish. And usually when you're trolling these big rips or these seaweed patches, it tends to be dolphin that are schooling. Shockingly, the fish we caught here were not mahi, so I can't wait to show you guys what we caught here. But as I continue to reel here, we now see this fish on top of the water right there. And when these fish get to the top of the water, or just when you hook up to them, you want to always keep your boat moving. As you guys can see, we have not slowed down the boat once here. And the reason we do this is because, as I told you guys in the beginning, it's another way of just keeping tension on these fish. If you stop the boat, you're giving the fish that shot of shaking the hook or potentially cutting you off. So instead of doing any of that, you want to up your odds and you want to keep the boat rolling, and you want to reel as fast as possible to put as much tension on these fish. And what we were fishing here was a planer, and these planers just take your bait down deeper. If you were just trolling top lines here, it still would probably work. You would probably get a lot of mahi, but it eliminates a lot of the game that sits under these seaweed patches. Some of these wahoo bigger dolphin, they're sitting under the seaweed patch like 30 feet. And if you don't have one of these planers to take your bait deeper, you're killing your chances of ever catching one of these fish. So we now got this planer right near the boat, and I'm going to show you guys what we have rigged up here. So we have this planer rigged up to a bridle system. So as you guys can see, I'm able to just disconnect the planer from my line here and continue reeling in this fish. A lot of other fishermen just have the planer rigged up to their line where you can't disconnect it at this point, so you'd have to hand line from here out. I don't recommend doing that, especially if you're new to fishing, just because you could injure yourself or you could potentially lose a fish. So I highly recommend using this bridle system. It makes your life a lot easier. And if you guys are trying to planer fish yourself, or you're starting to planer fish, if you guys have any questions on any of this, drop it in the comments down below. I would love to help you guys. And so we now got both of these fish behind the boat. So my little brother continued to reel his fish in. His fish felt a lot smaller than mine. But usually when you're trolling under these seaweed patches, if you're catching these wahoo, a lot of these wahoo tend to be smaller. Those bigger wahoo that you'll see, those 40 to 50 pound fish, tend to be caught on the wrecks in about 100 to 300 feet of water. You rarely catch those giants under these seaweed patches. They're usually about 10 pounds at the biggest. So we now see this fish right behind the boat, and we saw that it was a wahoo. And what makes the wahoo the most prized fish down here is because they're just so hard to catch. So my dad was able to gaff it here and put it in the boat. So my little brother continued to reel the other one in here, and this fish was really small. These smaller wahoo tend to be called wahoo. So we were able to bail this fish in, and we got 2 wahoo at the same time. So we hope you guys enjoyed this fishing video, and we'll catch you guys in the next Barjacks Family Fishing video.